Greetings, Internet world. You're in the Beat Sessions, your place for all things music. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Let's talk about 38 Special and their record Milestone. They released that on September 19th. This is lucky number 13 for the Southern Rockers, or maybe not, but it is their first record in 21 years, their follow-up to 2004's Drivetrain, which features the track Trooper with an Attitude. That is a song that many of you may recognize from the opening scene of the film Super Troopers. There's no denying that we're all riding a big wave of nostalgia with this one, but I think 50 years together is one hell of a milestone, especially when you consider that there hasn't been a single hiatus through that time period. I think that is definitely something worth celebrating, something that is worthy of a new record. Now, there's probably a handful of you out there that are saying, well, it's barely even the same band, and you're totally right. Don Barnes is the only original member working on this record that does also include contributions from keyboardist Bobby Capps, who's been with the band for a little bit, and drummer Gary Moffett. I will say that both of these guys were credited on the band's previous 3 albums, but it is the first record for bassist Barry Dunaway, who's been with the band since 2014, and guitarist Jerry Riggs, who joined in 2019. But I think that when it comes to 38 Special, the lineup doesn't really matter. In hindsight, this band looks more like a collective than a band, led by Barnes and, up until a decade ago, original member Donnie Van Zant. As the middle of the 3 Van Zant brothers, I think that Donnie's role as lead singer was a significant part of their popularity, why there was so much magnetism drawn towards this outfit. His older brother Ronnie, as many of you know, was the lead singer of Lynyrd Skynyrd and tragically lost his life in 1977 in a plane crash that took the lives of 5 others and basically halted that band's career until younger brother Johnny Van Zant revived it 10 years later. And Donnie, despite being regulated to a somewhat secondary role after 38 Special's second album, was a big part of the family connection that led to numerous members of Skynyrd being involved with this band throughout the years. Most notably, bassist Larry Johnston, who was a founding member of Skynyrd, but left the band a few years before they released Pronounced to Lynyrd Skynyrd. Was never featured on one of their records, but he's also the longest tenured bassist with 38 Special. And other Skynyrd ties include contributions from Billy Powell, who's just an absolute legend on the piano, and Gary Rossington's wife, Dale Krantz, who has a monster of a voice and actually still tours with the band, among many other guest spots and tour collaborations over the decades. I really love the ties that bind there with these 2 bands. And then there's the relationship with Survivor that still exists, with Jim Peterick showing up to write or co-write 7 of these 9 new songs with Don Barnes. That was one of those connections that I always thought was so wild because, admittedly, I don't really like Survivor. There's just like way too much cheese on tracks like The Search Is Over and High on You, and I can't really stand Eye of the Tiger and the whole kind of inspirational rock trend. It just doesn't do it for me. But I've always really dug 38 Special, and Jim was there basically for all their big hits. So it should be great to see his name in the song credits next to Don's on a record that has the goal of celebrating 50 years of tradition. It's just not, though. That's pretty much where the good feels stop. And I hate to say it, but I'm kind of glad I went into this thing with fairly low expectations. This record is nothing more really than a lighthearted half-speed victory lap. And while they've earned that lap, it's disappointing to see them take it at this speed and not really take advantage of this opportunity. Their success was built off combining the Southern rock sound with accessible arena flair, moving through circles of musical excellence while releasing 3 platinum albums in the 80s, with 1982's Special Forces achieving double platinum status. That's nothing to shrug off. But with Milestone, I think they really blew a cool opportunity to dial things back to the origins of this project, to pay homage to their Southern roots on those first two albums, because why not? I know it wasn't the big commercial stuff, but they had nothing to lose. And it's ironically the lingering sentiment towards the commercial success that Jim brought that I think is bogging this thing down. They should have gone into this project with no expectations, but they played it safe, and the lack of brave songwriting on the part of Don and Jim leads me to believe that they actually thought that there might be some type of commercial viability with this record, which would make me chuckle if I liked poking fun at things that I enjoy, but I don't. Don and Jim just seem to be dragging their bandmates and the rest of us into a dark room with a carousel slide projector of the good old days, mixed with themes of reflection and reconciliation as we age. And there's something there with that. Like, those are compelling themes. And the idea of that makes this record seem worthwhile in another regard, in the potential of its philosophic depth, until you hear lines like live, laugh, love, repeat. Like, I didn't realize Bed Bath & Beyond turned all their empty buildings into recording studios. It's the overly banal and nostalgic-soaked lyrics that are so generic that they inveigle a record that really has so much potential. The compositions are not particularly adventurous, but the various components of most of these tracks capture the arena-friendly feel that Jim helped to cultivate, and I was looking forward to hearing that element on this record amongst many other things. But even in a space where he excels, he still comes up short on so many of these tracks. There are other noteworthy contributions on this thing, but it is with a big asterisk that these contributions are noted. Randy Bachman of the Guess Who and Bachman Turner Overdrive helps to pen the somewhat forgettable Long Long Train, a track which might get a few months of rotation on adult radio before evaporating into the ether of office waiting room playlists. And then there's Train. Yeah, that Train, who appear on the track Slightly Controversial. And I think the only thing controversial about Train is why the band chose to collaborate with them when they could have picked literally anybody else that would have been more compelling and interesting and just flat out cooler to see on this record. This thing, it kicks off with your first track, So Much, So Right. You got a big vocal intro that opens with the line, "Don't want to ever slow down," before a sharp, chunky blues riff hits to play call and response with the lyrics in front of a classic mid-tempo rock and roll percussion. There's a bit of organ that begins to play as the track moves into the chorus, and it picks up momentum while adopting more of a hard rock and roll feel, with additional vocal harmonies and a steely lead riff providing more depth to this track. There's a little more organ play at about the 2-minute mark, and that leads off into a middle 8 that winds into a solo. The track works back into a final run of the chorus and finishes with a drawn-out coda built on the refrain, "So Much, So Right." It's an entertaining combo of blues, 80s hard rock, and even a little alternative, among many other influences, and I'm happy to see this song lead things off. If you're going to hit play and listen to anything on this thing, this is one of the better tracks. Your second song is Slightly Controversial, featuring Train. It begins with just a moment of guitar shredding before a light steel staccato riff takes the spotlight in front of cymbal-driven percussion and vocals that sit nestled into the mix with the production. The song evolves with the development of the drums and bass that works in as well. It has that 80s metal feel from the get-go, but it hits really with this heavier shift in the chorus, particularly the tonal change in the guitars, which remain consistent in their staccato and open note structure. A solo steps up at about the 2-minute and 15-second mark, backed by the lighter guitars of the verses, and then the track takes a final run at the chorus, jamming it out in numerous repetitions. Not a great song, and like many of the songs, the production on this thing, I just feel like when it could be a little muddled to its advantage, is just too clean. Your third track is All I Haven't Said, leads out with big drums and a sharp twinkly riff that works with a great balance of light tone and somber melody. There's also lots of tambourine to add a little flair. And then the verses mellow into percussion dominated territory with light arpeggiated guitar carrying the vocals. There's a dark mood in the track, but the lyrics do convey a sense of optimism held by the song's subject in achieving one's last wishes before they're gone. Something that I think that we can all relate to, something that we all ponder. There's intensity that builds through the verses, particularly in the drums, before the track takes a boost with the assistance of that twinkly lead electric guitar. Then the song transitions into a middle 8 at the 2-minute mark that takes us into a solo backed by big organ. It's radio friendly with a good amount of cheese, but it's likable, finishing with the chorus and a mellow outro. I would say it's definitely one of the better moments on the record. Your fourth track is entitled The Main Thing, picks the tempo up with driving percussion and a vocal count that ushers in a brief grinding riff to open this thing up. The verses are marked by a shift towards softer guitar textures and an airy atmosphere that balances that out. There's a bit of soul that builds into the track as it progresses, blending this solid balance of funk and just good old-fashioned rock and roll. The song features some solo work in front of the funk and soul element at about the halfway point, leading into one more verse and wrapping up with a big soulful finish. I love the music here, but this is the one with the lyrics live, laugh, love, repeat that just make me cringe. And, you know, like I said, the music is solid and I appreciate the sense of optimism in the world right now, especially, you know, things are rough, but there's so much more depth that they could have given to this sentiment with their words. Long, Long Train is your fifth song. Drumroll hails a track with a light airiness to it, contrasted by solemn melodies built on dueling lead guitars. The verses shift into modest temperament with the rhythm and vocals at the core and complementary guitar that gives the track kind of a contemporary country feel. The chorus takes a light boost and builds towards a hook built on the track's title, with the lead riff serving as a bridge in the song. There's a second cycle of verse and chorus that moves into a middle 8, then solo, and a coda that features the chorus and an extended refrain of a hook. This pattern and structure is becoming quite predictable at this point. It's about as cookie cutter as bro rock and country gets. It's easy to listen to, but wholly forgettable. Coming soon to you at a grocery aisle near you. Your sixth song is entitled Looking for My Life. A bold, twinkly, arpeggiated riff takes this one out the gate. It's a little better. Drum crashes follow to build the intensity, but then the track shifts abruptly into light verses carried by a shuffling riff. It's loose at first, but then the track finds a groove and denser textures as it moves through the chorus. There's a middle 8 that opens up just before the 2-minute mark with a play on that shuffling riff that almost takes us into reggae territory before blasting off into you guessed it, a solo. But at least the music's a little more adventurous here. I will give them that. They caught me off guard with the kind of ska element. The vocals work back in to finish the solo, with the track working into a structurally adventurous finish and another big refrain-driven coda. Again, predictable, but I like the elements that make this one a little more interesting. Your seventh track is entitled Making Up for Lost Time. A light drum roll opens up chugging rhythm and an arpeggiated lead that has this forlorn but serene tone that creates a pensive mood. It's one of the better riffs on the record, and it carries the transition into a verse that is marked by a hard shift into, once again, ska-influenced territory, with a pre-chorus that shifts the track back into rock and roll, and then a chorus that has got this big soaring melodic hook built on the track's title. It starts big, but then kind of fizzles to its detriment. The chorus, it looks like it has a lot of potential in the beginning, but then it just kind of like wanes off. At the 2-minute and 15-second mark, the song breaks down momentarily before using the hook to build back into a solo. They go big once more in the coda with this soaring refrain and lead guitar that plays off the vocals. Your penultimate track is entitled Windows of Memories. Got drums that open big once again to usher in a somewhat tranquil, kind of like doo-wop style track, particularly with the ride cymbal and the somewhat dreamy nature of the guitar riff on this one. The verse maintains this feel, but with the noted southern rock influence. I kind of like the heavier energy that complements it, gives it more of that kind of signature flair. There's a gentle lift of the energy into the chorus with the addition of some organ, and as the chorus concludes, the lead riff serves as a bridge into the next verse. There's a second cycle of verse, chorus that moves into a middle 8, solo, and then the track finishes, as you might expect at this point, with a big outro and a refrain, and it leads into your final track. Number 9 is entitled The Look, opens with dueling arpeggiated acoustic riffs and vocals that follow shortly after. It maintains a minimal ballad-style feel with the guitars gently dancing off of each other behind the vocals and soft swells of strings that remain very subdued in the mix. The track maintains this feel from start to finish, and I gotta say, it's actually a pretty solid way to end this record. I have sort of a love-hate relationship with this song. I love it because I think it's pretty solid. And lyrically, I think it's tapping into the times when this band really was at their best, when they were writing songs about putting the listener in the moment. This song in particular, talking about that moment when you find your true love, that moment where you're keeping your eyes open and you're always paying attention because it could happen at any time, anywhere. But it's that moment where you get that look from that person and you just absolutely know. I love that idea versus all of the overly nostalgic and sentimental tracks on this record that really feel generic. Once again, I think that there's themes on this record as far as reconciliation, as far as reflecting on the past and, wishing you'd done certain things, wishing you hadn't made certain mistakes. But the exploration of those ideas, of those themes, is just done in such a surface level way on this record. It's really kind of disappointing. I hope that this isn't the last album that we hear from 38 Special. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that this is like one of the greatest bands to ever grace the earth and to influence rock and roll. But 38 Special overall is pretty damn good. And especially in the early 80s, they had their moment. And I feel like for this record in particular, from Milestone, to celebrate that and everything that came before it and everything that followed, this effort really just sells all of that short. I think that this is a band that deserves to do better for themselves with this particular type of record. I'm not asking them to change the face of rock and roll, but we're going to celebrate. Let's bring a little more energy, a little more life, a little more depth to the party. I'm going to give this thing a 4.7 out of 10. Definitely passing on the vinyl. If you guys have listened to this project already, and if you've enjoyed it, and if you want to call me out, I'm happy to discuss this in the comments. I want to hear from all of you what your thoughts are. I think that there are moments that are good on this record, but I think that in those good moments, there's so much potential that is never realized. And I think that that's what makes this album ultimately so disappointing. So while I'm looking forward to dipping by my local record store, I will not be pleasing this thing. I will not be picking it up. We'll be spending my money on other things. But if you choose to listen to this record, I hope that you find it enjoyable. I hope you find this review helpful as well. Please like this video, share it, subscribe to the channel. If you're feeling generous, please drop a super gift. All that stuff helps me blow this project up in 2025. Stay tuned throughout the week for more album reviews. We will see you next time on the Beat Sessions.